We're going to move on now to our final contested race of the evening for House District 11, Gene Barragan and Derek Skees. 2 minutes each. We'll start with Gene.
Well, I'm Gene Barragan, and I'm a native Montanan, and I was raised in eastern Montana in Havre and learned how to lean into the wind at a really early age. I graduated from MSU Northern, and I've been involved in education at the middle school, high school, college, and university level for the last 40 years. I was a trustee of School District 5, and I'm an administrator for the University of Great Falls program, and I was a professor for Roy Antley.
Learned everything I know.
There we go. So I know a little bit about history. I'm very idealistic about entering this race, and I've been considering it for about 20 years. It is an open seat, and it is my home seat. I'm a resident at Lakeside, Montana for 44 years, and the district is Lakeside, Summers, Kyla, and Smith Valley. And Lakeside and Summers have chosen to not incorporate because they really don't believe in expanded government. We are delighted to be a volunteer community. We haul our own garbage. We don't have elected mayor or council. We answer to the county commissioners. We have a volunteer fire department. We have a volunteer QRU, and we like it that way. So I'm really a candidate because I'm interested in knowing that the least amount of government is probably the best amount of government. I come from an area that has 4 geographical neighborhood schools with about 900 students. We have a very high retirement community, and we have a demographics of about 111 businesses along Highway 93. And maybe I'll tell you about the rest of it later.
All right, can everybody hear me back there? Should I turn the microphone off? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
I have a curse, and it's called 2 voice boxes. My name is Derek Skees, and before I begin, I just want to thank you, Roy, for doing this tonight. Thank you to my fellow Republican women. Excellent event again. This is an awesome way to meet your candidate. And I'd like to thank my wife, Ronna Lee, who's awesome. She's the biggest part of my life. And you can't have 2 skis unless you want to go downhill, but my lovely wife has my checkbook, and she's over at the Flathead Valley Community College right now with their fundraiser. So you got to be where you got to be. Before I begin, I also want to say I have my awesome daughter-in-law, Ashley, here, and that young toddler who talks more than me is out there in the stroller. They named him after me. His name is Adrian. That was my middle name. It is my middle name. So I look in this room and I see everybody, and I know everybody in this room. And I thought to myself, why? And the answer is because I have volunteered for people that are active in this group. I've been at Chocolate Extravaganza as a judge or volunteer for 6 years. I've even participated in getting some of my wife's cooking in there. A phenomenal event. Republican women on charge. I love it. I've been with the Republican Central Committee here for 3 years as a leader and for at least a decade in volunteering. I work hard with those folks that have done the last 3 Lincoln Reagans, which I think were a very big success. And that's awesome because that's how we get people involved in the Republican Party, is to show an incredible program for Lincoln Reagan in fundraising. I have volunteered at the fair booth, which any of you know you got to figure out, 1, how to stop a 5-year-old from inhaling helium, and 2, how not to burn popcorn.
Yeah.
And 3, keep rabid Democrats out of your booth. I've helped Flathead GOP candidates since 1998, and I had the honor of working with Verdell Jackson on one of my first campaigns, and George Everett. And there's some great folks in the past that have ran in this county, and I'm honored to have helped them and worked with them. I'm involved with the Flathead ACT chapter. I'm excited to be on their legislative team, so I see a lot of you at those meetings. And I can't wait to pass some of that legislation when I get to Helena, because that's critical. And I'm done, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to questions, and again, 1 minute each, and then a 30-second rebuttal if needed. First question will be for Gene. Question is, would you support legislation for American law for American courts? And again, there's a little bit of a of an explanatory description. American laws for American courts prevents state courts from applying foreign laws and foreign legal doctrines when doing so infringes on the fundamental constitutional rights of any of the parties involved. So far, the legislation has received support in 10 states, including Tennessee, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arizona, Alabama, North Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, and South Dakota.
I think we're referring to Sharia law. Okay. There isn't any way that I would vote for Sharia law in the state of Montana. And I don't think voting against the idea of Sharia law is any implication that has to do with freedom of religion. It is that the law of this country is established in our Constitution and in our court system, and Sharia law is a foreign infringement.
Question, and I'm honored to be involved with the legislative team in ACT, and we're working on legislation that will carry to make that happen. And I'd love for us to say House District 11 was why we have 11 states now that are passing this legislation. It isn't just Sharia law. It's any law that isn't relevant or contingent or impinging on the Constitution, either of Montana or of the United States. If it's law from the UN, it's not law in Montana. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be law anywhere. And so this is a stopgap, not based on religion, I think. It's a stopgap based on activist judges that are looking for an outcome and are trying to find a law somewhere that supports that outcome. And what we're going to tell the judges in Montana is you can only look here, the Constitution, Montana, here, the Constitution of the U.S., or here, the Declaration of Independence, when you're going to figure out what law means in Montana.
Move on to our second question, and this one will be for Derek first. Do you support more school choice for education?
Ooh, thank you, sir. Great question. Yes, I do. If you notice, in America, our schools are failing. And they're failing when we judge it by other industrial nations. And so, yeah, our schools are okay. We're doing okay. Our students are okay. Not really. What is it, 40% need remedial education when they get to college to learn math and English all over again? No, the thing that works is competition. I build houses. If you want me to build your house, you're going to bring me in, you're going to bring in Carl Glenn, and both of us are going to try our best to give you the best package, and you decide from that competition which is the best. Competition works in schools too. Whenever a state tries it, the schools increase in giving the parents and the students what they need the most. So yeah, anything that gives us competition, vouchers, tuition tax credits. I know there's a lot of talk about charter schools, and that works in the urban areas where you can have a couple high schools to choose from. But there's what, 30-something counties in Montana that have less than 5,000 people? Charter doesn't really work in a lot of those areas. Competition is king in all things.
1-minute response.
Okay, this is really kind of my area of expertise, but I am definitely in favor of school choice. I was educated in a private school, and my child was educated in a private school. School choice has to encompass that we keep public schools strong, because about 80% of our students will matriculate at some time in public education. And I would differ with Derek on the stand that there's something wrong inherently with our public education. Montana does very well with public education, and our students score very well in public education. Public education can only deal with the social cross-section of people that are sent to our schools. And so teachers do an excellent job with the curriculum that is before them. It's a matter of who's coming to school these days.
Then there's one other thing I need to tell you. If you study Montana's Constitution, which I've already taken an oath to uphold, there's a lot of chapters in there about the way we fund schools. So choice is difficult to get done in Montana. So to really have meaningful change in the way that we fund our schools or allow parents to take the money, tie it with the student, and put it where they want to go, we've got to do some constitutional changes in Montana. But I think it is needed.
Right. Next question, and this will be for Gene initially. Since 2010, there has been a pension shortfall due to market downturn. If this issue arises again in the 2017 legislative session, as a legislator, what would be your solution to keep the state pensions solid?
Well, of course, I will be part of the state pension fund as a retired teacher after 40 years. We did make a move in the last several legislative sessions to have a good, strong conversation about this. And new teachers coming into the pension system, but it's not only teachers because it's public employees that are coming into the pension system. It will have to be handled differently than the pension system that we're looking at, or it will be a depleted system. So it'll be very controversial. It'll be a hard struggle to come up with an answer. I'm willing to deal with the issue and not just to blanketly say that we have to leave the pension system as it sits for new entries into it. But those who have come into the public system believing they have a pension fund that will support them in their retirement need to absolutely continue to be paid.
This is another great question. I was lucky in my 2011 session, I served on state admin, and we delved into this quite extensively. There already is a solution. Joe Balliet carried it. It was Senate Bill 54. You can look it up in 2011. That bill was awesome. It had a bunch of things, and it was designed by an interim committee made up of Democrats and Republicans, and they unanimously decided to send it to the legislature. Unfortunately, it died on political grounds. But there's a couple of things that happen with pensions. How many of you guys have had your 401k or something have a ditch in the last 5-10 years? How many of you are expecting government to pay that and fix that for you? So the reason why we're having a hard time getting this passed in Helena is we don't want to go to you and have you increase taxes to pay for it. So Senate Bill 54 provides a bunch of ways that we can solve this with the money that we currently have. There's a lot of department waste, and vacancy savings is one example. You can take the department's money they're wasting there, put it in the pension plan. There's also a thing where the folks that are going to get a pension, they'll game the system the last 6 months or 1 year or a year and a half. They go into another job that boosts up their money, and we need to stop that.
30 seconds, rebuttal? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to our fourth question. This one will be for Derek. Would you support a plan that would transfer federally controlled lands to the state of Montana for management?
Yes, you bet. I think that's a great thing. Jennifer Fielder, the senator, she's been leading this charge. Awesome. If you look at Montana's history, and I'm a huge student of history, when we became a state, we made a deal with the federal government. It was called the Enabling Act. And the federal government, because of the Louisiana Purchase, owned all the land in Montana. So they had to get it to give it to us. And so as soon as we became a state, they made a deal with us that they would start to give us that land back. By the 70s, they developed this thing called PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, what Jennifer so aptly calls pennies in lieu of trillions. And they bought us out and told us, no, we'll keep that as federal land, and you guys can just get these pennies that we'll throw out to you guys. And you look at North Dakota, which came in at the same Enabling Act as Montana, they have less than 5% federal land. And so, yeah, we can do a better job. We make more money per acre on state lands. All you got to do is go to the Helena Forest. Does anybody know what beetle kill is? No. The federal government is failing in the way it's handling our forests. No access, no resource gathering. We can't even get in it to hunt. Got to change. And if we give it to Montana, we can change it.
Would you support a plan that would transfer federally controlled lands to the state of Montana for management?
Yes, I would support that plan. And the federal lands, it's without question that the federal lands in the state of Montana are what hold us back on development of natural resources and are holding back the logging and the timber industry that was at one time very profitable to the state of Montana. And I would favor that. The only portion of that that might frighten me a little bit are things like the national parks and some national holdings that need to stay in a very small percentage. The rest of it, I think that the state of Montana could manage, but it certainly would mean that the legislature would be faced with how are we going to fund them? And can we create the kind of jobs that the federal government has not been able to create in order to fund them? So that will be the discussion in the legislature.
Well, if I know my lands council, national parks aren't even included in this language. It's mostly just Forest Service lands. And if you look at it, where do we get the money? Well, the simple answer is, what do we get per acre, Jennifer, out of the federal lands? Less than $1. What do we get out of state lands? We get almost $5. So what we do is, as we take the federal land and give it to the state, you start allowing folks access to the state. That generates revenue that then offsets the increased expense of hiring new forest rangers to access and to work on the roads and to solve all the problems. So it funds itself, you just have to do it.
Question 5, this one will go for Gene first. Would you support privatizing components of any department within the state government, and why?
No. I believe that the state government agencies might be held more accountable for the amount of funding that they have and giving an answer for how they used it, for instance, like the grants. But I would not favor turning over state agencies to a private entity for the same reason that was answered just a while ago, is to say, once it goes into private hands, eventually they can charge anything they want to, and we'll be paying that bill in the future.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. Yeah, we should privatize the federal government, state government. Reagan said it best. If it's in the yellow pages, it shouldn't be in the blue pages. Government shouldn't do the job. Parks and Rec, they should hire private lawnmowers in our community to do Parks and Rec. Privatization works when you have a really good scope. You're going to turn it over to capitalists. They're going to try and make money off of it. If you want to make sure that it's run properly, government writes a really good scope and holds those folks accountable to that scope. When I served in 2011, we had a privatization bill for the Veterans Home here in Columbia Falls. And all the conservatives like, oh, got to go for the privatization. I read the fine print. It did not have a good scope. It did not allow for a strong language to tell those folks how to run our Veterans Home. So I voted against it. A lot of the conservatives said, Skees, what are you doing? I said, read the scope. Do you want to put the veterans in that kind of care? Privatization works, but you've got to make sure that you write the law properly that allows for the people who are becoming private serviced to be serviced properly. There's a town in Georgia, and I wish I could remember the name of it. Every single public service is privatized, and they're saving their taxpayers a ton of money.
All right, and last question. This will be for Derek. Would you support legislation to eliminate funding for Common Core standards?
Yes. It sucks. It's not good. And honestly, it's not just Common Core. It's any mandate from on high that educates to the lowest common denominator. You can call it No Kid Left Behind. You can call it Common Core. There's a bunch of different titles, and there's 30 or 40 programs that have been going on since liberalism has been alive. No program that sets standards at the lowest possible level so that even high education kids have to go into some sort of advanced placement structure to survive, they're not taken care of. No, the federal government should not be in education. There's nothing in my Constitution that says they're in charge of education. It's entirely a state issue, and Common Core has got to go.
Amen.
Common Core is one of the most unpopular things that's come through education in the last little while. And Common Core has been implicated in reading in English and most recently in mathematics. And the general idea behind Common Core is that the standard would be brought up for the entire United States. It isn't the standard we've been worried about in the state of Montana. So Montanans have never really seen a need to bring the standard up. Okay, that being said, we don't need a Common Core for the state of Montana. They may need some kind of a Common Core to bring up the standards in some of the southern states where they are living with a failed system and at-risk schools, but not in the state of Montana. So my answer on that would be, I don't support that we need a Common Core for Montana.
Another component to Common Core and its failures are homeschool folks. When you homeschool your child, 9 times out of 10, that child's getting a pretty good education because the parents love them and really want to advance them for the future of their lives. Common Core, that child then when he decides to go to college, he's got to pass the Common Core scaled test in order to get in. That's an unfair situation to occur for folks that have the legal right to educate their children themselves.
Yep.
We're going to move on to closing remarks, 2 minutes each.
Okay, so my closing remarks are that I move around in my community or in House District 11, what people are looking at, they are interested in property tax relief, and that's the most common thing that we hear along the way. The other thing is that they are interested in water, and they're interested in the Flathead Lake, which is kind of the crown jewel of that area. The rivers that feed into it, so clean water, public access to land for fishing and hunting and for recreation as well. I do support Second Amendment rights, and I believe that we have lots of laws on the books at the moment in regard to guns. I think the main thing that we should do is to just enforce those. I am a proponent of representative government. I believe in popular sovereignty, that the population tells me what they would like me to vote on. So I think that the people need to reign, and they do that through the election process. But in addition to that, I think we need to have an ear to be listening to the people in our area. So with that, I would appreciate your vote, and I would appreciate your support in the election on June 7th.
I've been involved in politics now in the Flathead for 6 years. I started in 2010, and by the grace of God, a lot of hard work, I got elected in Whitefish. And by the way, I need to move to Whitefish so I can vote for Chet Billy. So I've already fought for House District 11 for 6 years. When I was in Helena, I was endorsed by the NRA and the MSSA, and I got an excellent rating for both of them because I voted for every single Second Amendment issue properly. That is the value that House District 11 already has. I've already shown I've done it, and I've done it for 6 years, because even when I wasn't in the session, you can ask the guys that serve, the biggest reason my wife wants me to serve is because I went to Helena 22 times in the last cycle. She said, Derek, just get in front of the button again. Holy cow. I worked hard with my legislative buddies in 2011 to fix the work comp rate. That benefits the businesses in House District 11. I supported bills already that would reduce taxes, ease regulation on businesses in Montana, two critical components to the return of prosperity for our folks. I already told you about the Veterans Home and my stance on that. I fought with you, many in this room, to defeat physician-assisted suicide, to secure the rights of parental notification, to defeat the Soros plan of the all-mail-in ballot. Yeah, that was a heck of a fight. And struggled against the CSKT since 2011. I have already fought for House District 11 for 6 years. I have stood for the sanctity of human life, from the unborn till the elderly. I still fight against the abuses of our Montana Supreme Court. And I want to foster, like I did in 2011, real, true, meaningful tort reform. And a loser pay bill designed to stop the environmentalists from doing to us what they love to do. I already stand for the lake of Flathead, because in Whitefish I learned to stand for the lake in Whitefish. I stand for access to our forests, our natural resources, access to health care without bureaucrats, school choice with parents in charge, against Common Core, and against the federal one-size-fits-all. Many of you know me because I'm already in the fight for you. I want to be your House District 11 representative. Let me continue the fight for you. Thank you.